have to have some leverage of competency.
The sad part is I have no swag, dog.
Oh my goodness, we got another one. The follow-up. The follow-up to all of the stuff that happened this past weekend in the draft. Got my guys back. Cam Wolfe, James Palmer. I just got to pat myself on the back first.
Do it.
Right? Because it's my show. And, hey, everybody knows me, right?
Yep.
Everybody knows how I am.
Yep.
But did I not call my shot? A few of them?
Yeah, you
So
did.
I say my shot, but a few people was calling me haters. Oh, Steve just hating. Steve just hating. No, you just hate what you hear coming out my mouth. That's the problem. So hit that subscribe button, please. Keep believing that the information you're getting on the Cut to a Podcast is for free. Just keep hitting that subscribe button for free, right?
Steve, can I throw something out real quick? Just to pat you on the back a little bit further?
Let me snack it then. Throw that thing out there.
Yeah. Two different, big time type of NFL insider type guys tweet out something about a receiver. I'm trying to remember exactly. I think one was on Worthy and one was on Odunze, I think. And the first comment that I saw was, hey, I watched Steve Smith break this dude down, and he knows receivers, and boom, boom, boom. I was like, I'm seeing this again on another tweet. So people are watching the breakdowns, man. They know what's happening, and they were using it. All these people that love the draft, they were using it to get their information, dude.
I appreciate it. And I had some teams calling me, too. It's like, hey, do you really like this kid, or are you just saying that? I have really taken this approach this year in this. I don't like a kid. I don't dislike a kid. Okay. I'm just watching this film that kind of tell me what's going on. I'm not watching his highlights. I'm watching the tape of when he doesn't get the ball. Why doesn't he get the ball? Why was this a good game? Why was this a bad game? What corner gave him a little bit of trouble, right? When I'm evaluating, hey, can this guy step up? And some guys fell by the wayside, right? Some people were highly upset at my top 5, flat out angry at my top 10, and just if they even said, man, you disrespecting people with your top 20. Well, I mean, the first 4 or 5 picks, I mean, your boy was
you was on point.
Batting it. Wow.
Yeah. Steve, what I love about when you rank players, you don't go with the consensus. You say what you feel. And I think a lot of times what maybe drives fans crazy about the draft is they look at these consensus rankings and they think this is the gospel, right? Everybody has this guy as the 3rd or 4th best receiver. Steve got him at 8. What's going on? Well, Steve is doing his rankings the way that Steve does his rankings. And as we just talked about, teams listen to Steve. When you hear, hey, Steve Smith thinks this about a receiver, GM's eyes, okay, let me listen. Steve knows. And so just because Steve's receiver that you saw as number 4 on, so-and-so's big board is number 8, that doesn't mean that Steve is off. Steve might be on, another guy might be off. And so I think I think this process is really cool because I know that I'm going to get the real from you.
I like all these kids because they all bring something to the table. But understand, as some folks say, what Yeezy said on games, not all these kids are the actual table. See, some of them think that, that there are and they will be instant. They're not. They're not going to be instant. Some will be contributing. Some will be the guy off the bat. And some will increase their roles over time as they learn how to play from Saturday to Sunday.
Okay.
Because it's a learning process.
Okay. Malik Nabers, number 1 on your list.
Yes.
2nd receiver taken. Goes to the Giants at 6.
Yes.
So I want to talk about with both of you guys, fit, right? What we're going to see, schematically how it works. Was it the right landing spot? Any intel we got, Steve? Let's go straight down the list. Malik Nabers lands in New York City. What's your first thought?
My first thought, I was talking about Malik Nabers landing in New York City, and there was another team who practices in New York City, but they play in New York City at the Meadowlands too when they flip it to the green, but they practice in Jersey. I believe if the Giants did not acquire Malik Nabers, I believe that the New York Jets possibly would have thought about it, considered it, and almost had that itch, right? Had that withdrawal, like, hey, we getting our guy Aaron back. How do we all of a sudden instantly make our offense even more deadly? And I believe because the Giants picked them up, that the Jets decided, let's fall back, get some more equity, and get a guy go in a different direction. And I think that's what they did, because I was getting some information like, yeah, keep preaching about a guy. We hope he falls. We hope he falls.
So the Giants are so interesting because most of the talk about them in the days ahead of the draft was, will they trade up to get the quarterback? Will they go and try to get Drake May, right? And when they couldn't get Drake, it shifted to their board. And
smoke.
Exactly, right?
Right? They wanted other quarterbacks to go ahead of them, Cam. So Malik Nabers would fall to them at 6. But they liked May. Yeah.
They loved Malik. And like I kept telling you guys in the pre-draft process, people have Malik higher than Marvin. I believe the Giants were one of those teams. And when you look at where the Giants are, the immediate question people will say, well, who's throwing him the ball? I actually think, and maybe you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, I actually think that's less of a big deal for me as far as the fit because of who Malik Nabers is and how he wins. We talked at the last chat a lot about how he creates and the yards after catch ability. I think that the offense is going to be centered around Malik Nabers. And so your quarterback is often the center of your offense. The Giants for the last couple of years, Saquon Barkley has been the center of that offense. Now, Saquon's gone. A lot of questions at quarterback. I think they can center this offense around Malik Nabers. And I'm going to make a prediction, y'all. I think Malik Nabers leads all receivers in yards and touchdowns this season. I know he doesn't have the quarterback
receivers or all rookie receivers?
All rookie receivers. Sorry, all rookie receivers. Ooh. Let me be clear there. Malik Nabers leads all rookie receivers in yards and touchdowns in 2024. That's my prediction because I just think that he will have the core of the offense on him. I think he goes over 1,000 yards.
The core? No, brother, he was not gonna have the core. He gonna have
right?
the whole. He gonna have a U-Haul and the hitch trailer in the back on him to carry this. They gonna cross country.
There is one other stat Cam didn't mention that he's going to lead rookie receivers in. Targets, because they're not going to throw the football to anybody else. Listen, this offense, and I do think this is there's a good and a bad about this. When I called around after this pick, the good is who's running this offense? Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka. Where did Mike Kafka spend all of his time? Kansas City. With who? Tyreek Hill. Not saying he's going to be Tyreek Hill, but a variety of ways to get a playmaker the football. And getting him in motion and doing all these different ways that you can find ways to free him up, Steve. I think that's a big positive for Malik Nabers. But the other part of it is, I had a high-level personnel guy hit me up afterwards. Well, actually, this was before the draft. This was great. This was morning of the draft. We're talking about players, and he goes, Nabers, man, he's so scary. He is unbelievably explosive. He is so dangerous. He does everything right on a football field. He plays the game exactly how you want him to play the game. I'm just curious about him landing in a big market or a big city. That might be interesting.
Well, he's
There's
young.
no better big market than New York City.
He's young, no, too. He's not even 21 years old.
And I think Daboll's a good coach for him.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a little bit of maturity, understanding where and how to maneuver through the big city, right? Because he was one of the big men on campus at LSU.
Yep.
Man, everybody deals with a learning process of being the big man in the city.
Yeah.
That's always a learning curve. And I'm not saying that that's bad or good. I'm just stating there is a process for everybody, right? Whether it's quarterback, receiver, lineman. We've seen this before where he's going to have some hiccups, not negative hiccups, but hiccups where he's adjusted because he's had at times been the number one guy, but he's also had other guys alongside him to take some of the workload off when teams are keying on him. He doesn't have that right now, but they eventually learn, and he'll be fine. But I like the pick. I'm excited about the pick.
Yeah.
Because he's with a coach who is going to emphasize featuring Malik Nabers in this offense.
I'd give the kid a chance. I know there's been the questions that came out about, big city. There's been questions about a lot of prospects. I remember Odell Beckham from LSU. There was questions about him coming out, and he came out and had 1,300 yards from the same city, from the same school in the same market. And I get it. I met Malik. I think he's a really good kid. I think that he's got a big personality, which honestly I think fits in there. Kayvon Thibodeau, who plays in that city, had a lot of questions about, how is he going to fit in this? Where is this level of football? Kayvon Thibodeau's a baller. I got a feeling that Malik is going to fit great, and I believe, like I said, he's going to have a Odell Beckham type impact in his rookie season. So he's my pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Okay. How about number 2, Steve? Marvin Harrison Jr., your second receiver on your list. He goes first, though, 4th overall to the Cardinals. This was almost just kind of something that we almost just sketched in stone. If they stay at 4, they're taking Marvin.
Yeah, I had to rank them, and I ranked them based off what I felt. But again, the top 3 guys, you can't go wrong with them. It doesn't matter. Really, it's one of those things, we rank them, and people respond. I just gave the rank because of what I saw on film, but Marvin now gets to play with a quarterback that he missed out on last year, right? When he had C.J. Stroud, balling.
Yep.
He was tearing people wide open. And now he's back with a quarterback that could drop dimes all over the field.
Kyler is accurate, man.
Yes, he is.
And he's fully healthy. He's got a whole offseason not to worry about rehab. Like, that's a big key. Just work on getting better and working with him. So I'm excited to see Kyler this year.
Yeah, I would imagine he's going to have 1,000 yards too, 1,100 yards. He's going to get a lot of catches. We're just going to really see how fast do they gel and where, I've saw some people say, he's an X, he's a Z, he's always played X. Understand the X is a speed. Is really looked at as speed. I can see Harrison playing F or Z in this, which means that he's going to get a lot of motion, creating a lot of free access for himself to be able to not be double teamed as much or thrown off on the timing of the offense. So I like this pick, obviously, and I think, I imagine his first game he's going to have 100 yards in a regular season. I already see it coming.
I had 2 things on Marvin I wanted to get out there. One, there's one guy I always talk to because everybody during the draft process just raves about people, and he's like a glass is half empty dude. And everybody's not every quarterback. I don't know what people are seeing, dude. This guy's a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick. Like, he's always so realistic. Everybody gets overdrafted. I'm like, Marvin, he's like generational talent. And I don't say that. Like, this dude, I watched 2 games of him. He's like, I watched 2 games. I'm oohing and on. And then I go and look at his measurables after the 2 games, and I'm like, he's doing this at this size? Like, this body control and this ability to do these things at this size is what blew him away. He goes, I'm just going to say right now, when he walks across the stage, don't hand him a hat, hand him a gold jacket.
I love it.
Because that is Marvin Harrison Jr. What I want to ask you, Steve, is a lot of people, when we compare these 2 before we move on, it's the explosiveness of Malik, right? To go to the house from wherever on the field. But Marvin's ability to always, he's not that, but his ability to always kind of get 6 or 7 after the catch, which is like regular, but he's not taking it all the way. What is that skill set? You know what I mean? After every catch, he still does quietly get a couple more yards.
First of all, his, just his stature and how he's always leaning forward. He understands exactly where he is in the defense, right? His IQ is off the charts of understanding because of just playing the game and being around the game. Some people are taught how to play, and then if you're taught how to play by your dad, and then you already have all that athleticism, You just get on the field, and there are things and how you see things are totally different than how other people see things.
Cool.
And so it's just the innate ability that he has to play football that is a fair and unfair advantage, because there is some sense, right? Just like Fitz, there is some sense. When you're around ball and you are ear hustling on the sideline in the middle of the game, right? Like Fitzgerald was a ball boy for the Minnesota Vikings when Denny Green was the head coach. When you're just
Ear
around
hustling.
that type of football, you are just used to hearing things that the normal person doesn't hear. So the things that you're hearing, it becomes so elementary when you start, you're like, it's in your brain, but you're not really ever doing anything. And so it's just there. It's just there. It's just there. Then you're playing Pee Wee football league, and all of a sudden you start having these memories and thoughts of how to play ball because you always have been around ball.
Yeah.
That jacket's accurate.
As I hear you say Dennis Green, I laugh and I just think about they are who you thought they are.
One last Marvin said we thought Marvin was.
Right, exactly. One last thing about Marv that's going to be so interesting to watch, and we talked about in our pre-jab process, he did things completely different. He decided he didn't want to do the workouts and everything. And if he kills it like we expect his rookie year, and actually is way more advanced than the other receivers in the draft, you do wonder if this creates a trend for the top 1%. Just the top 1% of receivers, you know?
It will, but understand that he's in a different he was just in a different situation.
You got to check every box to be able to do that. Yeah. All right, Rome Odunze, Steve, your third receiver. He's the third receiver off the board. Bears at 9. What's your thought on Rome landing there?
I thought it was a good pick. He adds another level to this offense. I think on paper, the Chicago Bears have gotten in a place that they haven't been since 1985, right? 85 meaning that the expectations are real. Yeah. I think on paper you can really say they have their quarterback. But one of the things that stood out to me with Rome, I think Rome be fine. He got some veterans ahead of him. I think situationally they got him in a perfect situation. I got a question in for you two. Here in Carolina, and you see what happened with Bryce last year. What is a realistic expectation for the Bears, and what do you deem successful?
I go. This is what I do, Steve. Because because this is the Bears, right? And they have been starving for a quarterback for an eternity. Like there just hasn't been the guy. It just hasn't existed there. I think, to me, when you pick this high in the draft and you pick a quarterback, number 1 overall, you just have to end the season, Steve, going, we made the right pick. You just have to assure yourself that, yes, we made the right pick. Let's just be entirely honest. Situationally, completely different between Bryce and CJ. But I think everybody in Houston's going, we made the right pick. And everybody in Carolina's going, I still think we made the right pick. Yeah. That's where it's at. You just got to end the year going, yep, that was the guy. We made the right play. And look at this kid at 9. We definitely made the right move there, going skill as well. Because to wind this back to Rome and the success that this team can have, TJ Houshmandzadeh was working out Rome Odunze a bunch during this offseason. They get a call to go work out with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Caleb Williams out in California. They put Rome right in there. They have a workout together. And Houshmandzadeh's like, if he does get picked at 9, this is a pretty good group I'm looking at here right in front of me. I'm curious what number 1 quarterback walks into a better wide receiver room. Is this one of the better receiver rooms in the NFL, Steve? Because Rome and Marvin are probably the most non-scheme dependent out of the top 3. I think Malik's a little bit more situationally how you set him up to succeed. Rome can play inside and outside. He's pretty polished. He's a good prospect, a really clean prospect. And you add him to a slot receiver like Keenan Allen and an explosive player like DJ Moore. Like, is this automatically a top 10 receiver group already?
Trying to get me in trouble.
I mean it. This is how you get out of this and these things, Steve. TV veteran right here. They have the potential to be, yes.
That's good stuff.
Right, I'm looking over here and I'm going, damn,
yeah. Keenan can really still play.
Because you automatically have to give you got to give hall passes to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen because what do they do? They come to work.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. They come to work every single day. Despite the weather, despite the outcome, you know that these two guys are going to give you everything that they have, whether it's lacking at the quarterback position or lacking with the quarterback play and execution or lacking of just having a good offense.
Yep.
Right?
Ask Keenan about that at times.
What'd you say?
Ask Keenan about that at times over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Hey, DJ Moore too for a while.
You know? And that's exactly why I said all of those. I laid all of those out, right?
Great point.
I'm going all these up.
I got a question for you. We were just talking about X's, F's, and Z's here. We got 3 receivers who've been the alpha for their team for most of their career. Rome's obviously younger. How do you see that fitting? Like, obviously, they're going to do the Bears staff is going to do
Marvin
that.
wasn't always the alpha.
How do you see? I'm talking about for the Bears crew, for DJ.
Oh,
for
I thought you said
DJ.
3.
Yeah, no, DJ Keenan,
these 3 guys,
DJ Keenan and Rome. Like, how do you see their best fit within the offense? Like, do they overlap well, or is there some contrast? How do you see it?
I see a healthy competition that turns into, I bet you I can beat my guy faster than you could beat your guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, the older guys start to help the younger guy because he's trying to do things too fast where it messes up the timing. But eventually what you'll have is you have the 3 alphas, you have all 3 dogs in there. And now it becomes really, can I get my guy faster and better and separate even better than you can? And so it starts to become who's going, you see it at times on kickoff with special teams guys where they kick it out of the end zone.
Yep.
But you see guys sprinting through the end zone because it's a race now. Who's going to touch the finish line first? Who can get the most, you can't do it anymore now, but who can get the most crackbacks? Who can get the most, how many mosses how many pancakes can I get? So all of a sudden you have this healthy competition amongst the 3 of them on, can I get to my 15-yard curl faster than you can get to yours? And so it just becomes this healthy competition that makes everybody better.
Yeah, I dig it. Shane Waldron's going to put 11 personnel on the field, much more than he did in Seattle, by the way, too, with these 3 guys. We're going to have 3 receivers on the field, a lot more than he had
and then
up there in Seattle.
Cole Kmet going to start to say, hey,
I got favorable matchups over here,
hey,
guys.
don't forget, don't discredit me because of my skin tone now. I can get going too.
Hey, you get that linebacker in Cole Kmet and say, I ain't a linebacker type tight end. I know a lot of us might be linebacker type tight ends. I'm not a linebacker 100%. Type tight end. Don't cover me with a linebacker.
100%. This is going to be a fun team to watch, man. Fun team to watch. Another fun offense. Brian Thomas Jr., the 4th receiver taken, 4th on Steve's list. So he's just killing it right now, right down the list. 23rd overall to Jacksonville. Cam talked about it in our pre-draft show. Jacksonville's looking for a receiver.
Yep.
There's a point I want to get to with this, Steve, because this was a player that was specifically came up when I was talking with an offensive coordinator about development. And he was like, Brian Thomas, if he lands on the right team that develops him properly, look out. Like, this kid just needs the right position coach and the right development, which does not happen. That's the point I wanted to get to you and have a discussion with you about. That does not happen in every single building. So what do you think about that specifically, and with Brian, honestly, about his development and how important that will be? Because there's a chance he could be a clear-cut number 1 if this early portion of the process is done correctly.
He's a clear-cut number 1 on this offense because Calvin Ridley was the clear-cut number one. However, he lacked the ability to consistently get off press coverage. A lot of teams.
What does Brian Thomas do well?
So Brian Thomas.
Talk about it.
Yes, Brian Thomas does a lot of things well. His length and his height, his ability to get off the quick releases. You don't see it too much in his college film because even Malik Nabers does some things. Cortez Hankton is the wide receiver coach at LSU.
Really
his technique he's really good, but his technique I vary from. They all stand straight up, and they all use that shoulder release. And so that's just a preference that I say that slows him down a little bit.
Okay.
He does do a great job of getting skinny and shoulder releasing and going, but at times it slows him down. Then the other thing, looking back completely behind for the ball versus body forward, head back to where it doesn't slow you down. Calvin Ridley is going to be fantastic, and I love the dude. But a lot of teams at times he got a little bit ghost on me because when teams figured out if we can press him up and throw off the timing, he's not as dangerous. And so now you have Brian Thomas Jr., their wide receivers coach, who his name is escaping me. He was the wide receivers coach.
Chad Hall.
Yes, Chad was in Buffalo balling. You remember that
they
story?
Love Chad. I remember when all those receivers got together and bought a nice big huge. He's a small guy, but he had to jump up into it. A nice giant truck for Christmas. Yeah, they loved him, man, up there.
That dude develops wide receivers in that offense. People don't want to hear this, and you can get mad if you want to hear it. I'm just giving you the news. I don't talk about the weather. The news is this. In this offense with the Jags, the reason why the Jags allowed Calvin Ridley to walk is they wanted Calvin Ridley at their price, knowing what he brought to that offense. However, you started to see when Christian Kirk was not available, you started to see the limitations of Calvin Ridley contributing to this offense as the true number one without a comparable. If you can get a guy that knows how to play football, which is know his role, and his role, Thomas and Ridley were to be the number one. And let me tell you what a true number one is. A true number one can run every route on a route tree.
He's not there yet, right?
If you cannot run every route on a route tree, when it is time to re-up, your numbers here and their numbers here. But the new team gave him everything he wanted. And they got the opportunity to draft his replacement. And they have the coach who can develop him. And so I think he's going to be an outstanding football player. I can see him getting close to that thigh wow too.
Okay. I love it. I actually love how the Jags handled this first round. We talked about it in the pre-draft process. They did a lot of homework on receivers. They desperately wanted one. I'm told, talking to some executives, they tried to trade up in the top 10. Nobody was biting. They wanted to get up there and get one of the big three, but they had Brian Thomas right behind that group. And the reason why I love this fit for them, because one, they traded back from 17 to 23. He would have been a good pick at 17. They traded back, got more picks. Credit Trent Baalke for handling that situation, knowing what the value was there. But you look at what Brian Thomas does, even right now. We talk about what he can be, what can he evolve in. Right now, he is a very good vertical receiver. That's what he showed at LSU.
Throwing the fade. Yep.
For the last 2 years, the Jags have desperately needed a vertical deep threat for Trevor Lawrence. That's why they went and got Calvin Ridley.
Hold on, no. Beyond running a go route.
Correct. Someone that threatens defenses with, like, not only, like you said, a go route, but someone we always have to have a safety back for, because whether it's a post, whether it's a deep crossing route, whether it's a go fade route, whatever it is, you need to be aware of him. And like you said, Calvin Ridley, the solution that teams found. And when you look at the numbers, no receiver was pressed at the line of scrimmage more than Calvin Ridley last season, which is eye-opening. And the reason why they did
Almost
that
like scouting happened,
is because they were effective. They early in the season, you saw Kansas City do this with Snead and McDuffie, get hands on Calvin Ridley, and he buckled.
No.
He didn't?
Don't shortchange Snead. That was not hands. He put them paws on him.
Paws. Okay. He put the paws on him. He put the paws. And what's funny is now they're teammates in Tennessee. And so Calvin Ridley going to have every day to try to figure out how to get them paws
He's going to get better. He's going to get better.
But teams saw.
Go get a lot of practice.
Exactly. So teams saw that, and that really took him out of the game. Nearly 50% of his snaps he was getting pressed on. Brian Thomas at 6'3", you're not going to be able to press Brian Thomas the way you were able to press Calvin Ridley.
You work on your game because, as we know, right, you can pull up, man, you can be 5'9" or 6'3".
Yeah.
If you got the right corner, guess what?
They're gonna get you.
You're gonna get jammed.
Yeah.
So no one is immune to getting jammed.
Right.
The question is after you get jammed, can you need to get you some rye bread? Can you get another slice in that toast?
Yep.
Because the guys who don't know how to do that, that's where Calvin Ridley started to expose himself and made the Jaguars start to go, okay, we want him back, but for less.
Yes. And they thought they had him. They did want him back. They thought they had him. Tennessee went higher. Some would say they overpaid, but that's part of free agency. Part of free agency. But
you usually overpay in free agency.
Yes. Look at the value of Brian Thomas Jr. is making 4 years, $15 million on his rookie slotted deal this year compared to Calvin
with the option.
With the fifth-year option.
Yep.
Absolutely. Versus Calvin Ridley, 4 years, $92 million. Now he'll probably only see 2, maybe 3 of those years, but that's a $77 million difference over 4 years if they played out their contracts. And like you said, you got a younger receiver who's going to extend probably by the end of his contract, and maybe even earlier. Maybe it's year 2 or year 3. We're looking at Brian Thomas as a better receiver than Calvin Ridley if he reaches his ceiling. And so I think even though they failed in their mission to get Calvin Ridley back, they came out of it on the better end of it, taking Brian Thomas. And now Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis can kill on those vertical routes, going deep. And then you have Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram who kill it with the horizontal routes. And you have a more diverse offense with Travis Etienne behind him as well. And so I think this is setting the Jags up for a lot of success.
I agree.
Yeah. Listen, Evan Ingram only had the second most catches in a season in the history of the league for a tight end. I mean, he's going to have a lot more room to work with, too, when you got those two guys on the outside. But don't forget that Brian Thomas Jr. had 17 touchdowns last year at LSU. And he plays like he's 6 foot, Steve, when he's 6'3". Like he moves like a guy that's much smaller than he actually is. It's impressive. How about Xavier Worthy, Steve? 5th receiver taken, 5th on your list. We're just knocking them down one after another. The Chiefs trade up. They were unsuccessful in trading up for Zay Flowers a season ago. They're able to trade up in this draft and get Xavier Worthy out of Texas, the 28th overall pick. They move up, and I got a text from an NFC GM right after this trade that said, man, the entire AFC just must bleep and hate the Bills. Because the Bills move back, let the Chiefs slide up, and they get the fastest player to ever run at the Combine in Xavier Worthy. What is his fit with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in this offense, Steve?
Well, they used the 28th pick because the next time they're picking is way in the 60s and 50s, which we all know he wouldn't be there. However, being the 28th pick, right, even in the 32nd pick, that still puts him first with the 5th-year option, which helps your salary cap with your quarterback, and then obviously they utilize that extension too to create some more cap space for themselves with Travis Kelce. It's a good pick because it adds for speed and what they want, but also understanding some people are, putting the Bills on Front Street and saying, why would they pass up on a guy like that? Well, the Bills don't need that kind of speed. They need someone with a bigger presence.
Yep.
But the Kansas City Chiefs need a speed guy because that's their offense. They want to attack defenses with leverage. They want to attack defenses with different kinds of window dressing. But ultimately, Andy Reid has a prototype. People don't like to hear this. Andy Reid has a prototype. He wants a big body guy who can possess, but then also he wants a speed guy who can actually catch the football. And then some other guys who can also maneuver and give you some yards after the catch, which I still believe in Sky Moore. But Sky Moore now has the ability to attack the defense, take the pressure off him of being really the traditional number one that he was not, right, based off this year, being the 3 and exceeding all expectations, kind of settling back in to the type of player I believe he can be. But Xavier Worthy just makes this team better. He also gets to hide a little bit his body frame. I don't think he really is going to gain much more weight. I would say
they don't expect him to, Steve.
7 pounds is the max. I think outside of 7 pounds, you start looking at his framework, his calves, his hamstrings, his shoulders. I don't see him in 5 years being, 197 pounds. That's not how he's going to be. He's going to lose some speed. He's going to have soft tissue injuries if you put on that amount of weight with his body structure. But I really love this. And I think it was strategic. And I think it also talks about how everybody's so upset at the Bills and the Panthers for either moving out or moving in. But understanding the Bills moved out because it sounds like the guys that they had were not available.
And listen,
so
the Bills needed picks, man. Steve, the Bills also needed picks, which helps.
Needed guys.
You're right. And the way you were describing it was perfect, right? Because after those big, you could almost say 3.5, because people had like the big 3 and then Brian Thomas Jr. And then it was kind of like, what's your flavor? Like there's a lot of talent, but what flavor fits what you're looking for? And Xavier Worthy fits exactly what the Chiefs are looking for. Oh, yeah, here's the first time we're bringing this up with these receivers, and we saw this at play throughout the entire draft. The special teams aspect, which is now back in the league. And so you're going to give Dave Toub, one of the best special teams coordinators in football, just here's Xavier Worthy as well, who is going to play special teams, I'm told. The comp, Steve, as you mentioned, that Andy Reid has players he likes, the comp is not Tyreek Hill. We just look at speed. It's Deshaun Jackson. Like that's where Andy sees the comparison is Deshaun. He doesn't see the comparison in Tyreek Hill.
Hey JP, as you say Deshaun, you know how we feel about Deshaun. Deshaun's a different player. That's a lofty comp. Hey, if Xavier Worthy turns into Deshaun Jackson, man, we're gonna have a lot of questions.
I would say this: if that's the comp, I believe Xavier Worthy's route running, his route tree, may be a little bit more advanced and asked to do a little bit more than Deshaun Jackson was asked to do in Philly, because in Philly, Deshaun was not asked to do some of the routes that Xavier Worthy has already done and showed success in doing.
That's a great point. Because the two things that really jump out, Steve, and tell me to the Chiefs side of things, talking to them, and I'm curious if this is it. They think he's you mentioned the size. They don't think he's going to put on a whole boatload of weight either, and they don't expect him to. They think he's really tough for his size. They think he plays really, really tough. He doesn't put himself in poor situations either. He'll get physical certain times, but he tries to avoid it, and he's pretty decent at it as well. But they think he's pretty tough.
You know why? I mean, he's 100 and something pounds, and he understands, right? So, hey,
exactly.
Bro, there's sometimes you gotta pick your poison,
man.
One thing I want to say, JP, you had a great point about whether the comp is Deshaun or not. A lot of people will say Tyreek Hill just because of the speed. Tyreek's a much bigger, different type of runner. But I am curious, Steve, and I'll tee this up for you. They signed Hollywood Brown this offseason, obviously, and Rashee Rice has got his legal stuff going on. How do you see...
He's going to be suspended. Let's just put it out there.
Yeah, I was going to leave it
They're
at that.
They're expecting half the season at least.
Yeah, so Rashee Rice is probably not going to be a part of this offense for a significant amount of time, right? But you got two speedsters who are very small. Let's call it what it is. How do you see them fitting if they're the 1-2 at the wide receiver position? Obviously, you got Travis Kelce, big money Travis Kelce now in the inside. But how do you see those two small receivers maybe succeeding together?
What I believe Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs are doing is applying enough pressure to get people off of them, because when you don't have enough threats in this offense, it makes it extremely difficult and it adds more pressure.
We saw it last year.
And yes, last year it adds more pressure to Patrick Mahomes, and it makes the running game at times impossible to be effective. So if you have enough speed and you have this running game with Pacheco, it allows the defense to show their cards automatically, right? Now they're not, because you got too much speed to sit there and try to mask it and disguise. If you're trying to disguise and try to run, think about this. If they got one of these fast wide receivers in the slot and they're trying to disguise it with a safety or a linebacker, and all of a sudden they quick snap. Now this linebacker, who is significantly slower than Hollywood Brown or Worthy, now you have a vertical mismatch. Speed on speed, not physical, but just his MPHs versus his MPHs, and they're saying we like our chances with our speed guys.
Yeah. Last point I'll make on Xavier Worthy is a few other things jumped out to the Chiefs. One, Steve Sarkisian and Andy Reid are very, very close. And he kept talking to Andy about how smart Worthy is.
Yep.
His football instincts and how high level those are as well, Steve, because we mentioned that Andy Reid has a type. That's kind of changed over the years too, because the way this offense works, you better pick up a lot, because there is a lot put on you if you're a key player in this offense that you have to be able to do. And they believe he can run for days. He never wants to leave the football field. And that's the type of player you're going to have to be up there in St. Joe's during training camp if you want to try to get reps as a rookie. That's another big part of it. But Hollywood and Worthy going deep. They also believe, and for some reason Kansas City is ripping me apart on X over the last 24 hours about this. It's okay to say Travis Kelce's lost a step, guys. It's all right. Like, it's fine.
He's
like
34. Or 34,
He'll be 35
right?
in October. It's okay to lose a step. You would have thought I would have just said the worst thing in the world about Taylor Swift, but they went all over me, and he needs more room to operate, and it's going to help him operate in the middle of the field with these type of players on the outside as well. It helps their offense attack defenses on a variety of levels. I think that this is a really, really good pick for them, and you mentioned the return game. It's huge.
JP, if I just transition here, first of all, let me give Steve props, because we talked about this at the top. For those who were with us at the top 5 receivers on Steve's list all went in order to the top 5 teams, right? To top 5 wide receiver needy teams. You hit that on the money. And then as we get out of the top 5, things start to get funky. That's where people start to get their fits, their best fits, their flavors, as JP mentioned earlier. And I want to talk about this as a cluster group, because something really interesting happened. We had a wide receiver run that happened right after Worthy. From picks 31 to 37, we had 5 receivers taken. And it started with Ricky Pearsall to the 49ers and ended with the Patriots with Jalen Polk. And I just kind of want to get both of you guys' thoughts about what you thought, what stood out in that group, because there's a lot of behind the scenes elements going on with trades of who my favorite is, what the fits is. And I have a story I want to share after you guys, jump in here. But what stood out from the 49ers perspective: Ricky Pearsall at 31, Xavier Legette to the Panthers at 32, Keon Coleman to the Bills at 33, Ladd McConkey to the Chargers at 34, and then Jalen Polk to the Patriots at 37.
The 49ers pick for me said a lot of things. And so here's how I thought when I saw the 49ers pick. Kyle Shanahan said, I need another receiver who is an excellent route runner. Brandon Ayuk is an excellent route runner. Ricky Pearsall is an excellent route runner. Christian McCaffrey, for a running back, is an excellent route runner for the running back. Kittle excellent route runner for the tight end, Deebo Samuels. An exceptional playmaker. And Ricky Pearsall now adds that level so where they can attack. What I believe is going to happen, they still have the kid from Penn State that they acquired. He's going to play special teams. But what I believe, I think Jauan Jennings has not signed his free agent tender. Ray McLeod goes because he's a special teams guy who desires to play wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But, man, I'm telling you, I don't think it's Deebo. I don't think it's Brandon, who I think is the odd man out. Possibly can be Jauan Jennings not signing that free agent tender, and now they have to make some moves. So now all of a sudden, Ricky Pearsall and Jauan Jennings are now all of a sudden, I know they love Jennings. He's a hell of a football player. But I think Ricky Pearsall runs better routes.
Okay. I look at this.
I said it like that. This isn't shade, Deebo is Deebo. He's a playmaker. Mm-hmm. I have yet to see Deebo get the responsibilities that Brandon Ayuk has gotten in the route game. And Brandon Ayuk cannot do what Deebo does in some of the things that they use Deebo in. That's just not his bread and butter. Can he do it? Yes.
Yeah.
But will you get the best outcome? I don't believe so.
The word that comes to my mind with the 49ers, Steve, is flexibility. I think they have a remarkable amount of flexibility now because if you wanted to, or if somebody comes that didn't get the receiver they wanted to, I don't know, there's 1,000 receivers taken in this draft, but maybe a team still needs a receiver. And both those guys are somewhat available. It almost seems like Deebo would be the one to leave contractually wise and the way the fit works and everything you're describing, maybe more likely than Ayuk. But here's the deal. They don't have to move anybody. It almost this allows them to have the flexibility to do that if they'd like. But at the same time, doesn't it also make you just kind of think, guys, we're all in on it this year. Like we're all in on providing Brock Purdy as many options and weapons as possible. And Ricky Pearsall, when you just look at everything that teams tell you about him, Steve, does he not just tell you this is a Kyle Shanahan guy? Like can find space in zones, can find little nuggets, create space in tight pockets. Like all of these things you hear about him, that's Kyle Shanahan.
And that's where value in understanding the type of player that you're getting, why these visits are good, what can he handle and what he cannot handle. People think everybody can handle the same workload or the same responsibilities, which is why A.D. Mitchell dropped, why Coleman dropped, and also why Luke McCaffrey was picked over Troy Franklin, because Troy Franklin, he can play football. Mm-hmm. But there is some limitations to his game. That there is limitations to Luke McCaffrey's game as well. But here's the difference. He's a former quarterback. His last name helps him. And I believe all about nepotism and family names. Because guess what? I hope one of my kids, my grandkids, gets the opportunity to play skill. They go, hey, his great-grandpa was Steve Smith Sr., baby. So we know he got a good gene pool.
It's in the blood.
Right? Yeah, it's in his blood. Yeah. Who wants a guy that says, yeah, his dad couldn't play nothing. His dad was awful, 2 left feet. No, you don't want that.
Yeah.
Right?
I think what you're saying about the 49ers, like beyond the last name element, when we go back to Ricky, the fit matters, the role matters.
Yes.
Right? Like as you look at the group of receivers that went after, particularly the next two, like Coleman and Legette are going to be, I think they're going to be good receivers. Would they have been as good of receivers in the 49ers system? Maybe not. They're more physical, receivers who may win in a different way than Kyle Shanahan wants his receivers to win. And so
I'll ask you then.
Yeah.
If Legette, they had a chance to get Legette.
Yep.
Right? So here's the question. Where does Legette play with the 49ers if he goes there? So because he's a first-round draft pick, so is he automatically split reps with Deebo?
Yeah. No.
Right? Does he split reps with Brandon Ayuk?
No, he probably sits on your bench and waits for one of those guys to leave. Maybe the next year, if it is that all-in, and I've heard that too, the last dance, quote-unquote, for the 49ers, maybe he's more of a developmental, we'll wait till 2025 for him to have a huge role. Whereas Ricky, regardless of whether those two stay or not, is probably going to have a big role. And he probably, and your point about Juwan is great. I could certainly see him starting week 1 when they go 3 receiver sets. They don't go with a ton. When they go 3 receiver sets in 49ers with Debo and Ayuk out there over Juwan. 32 was such an interesting pick for me. Just kind of sharing a little elements there, and I'm sure you want to chime in, Steve, from the Carolina Panthers perspective, but like a little behind the scenes. You don't? Maybe don't. I don't want to put words in your mouth. But like 32 was so interesting because it's had less value, but previously teams love to get into the first round to get that 5th-year option. Now it's guaranteed. It's not as appealing, but it still has value. But I was in New England this week for the draft for NFL Network, and so I spent a lot of time with Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf and the Patriots execs, and I was told by multiple people in that room they were trying to move up hard to 32. They wanted to get to 32 because they had Xavier Legette and Keon Coleman, the Florida State receiver, ranked very similarly, and they wanted to get one of those 2 receivers. And, we don't know how trade talks went, but people in the Patriots building believe they were used, and the Bills went to the Panthers, which they have a relationship with Dan Morgan and Brandon Beane, and essentially the Patriots people think, hey, they said, hey, we got this offer out here. If y'all want y'all guy, we're going to need a little bit. And ultimately, it was the Panthers who made the move up, went and got Legette, and then the Bills stayed at 33. I don't know how they knew that their guy would be there versus the Panthers. Maybe there's a little bit. I don't want to speculate, but, you can do your homework.
You can ask on the phone, Cam.
Exactly.
Who you guys trained up for?
Exactly. And so
first of all, I got another team calling me in my division.
Yeah, exactly. That's
they're
the
calling
part.
me,
and
they're calling me, and I'm not interested. I'm not interested in helping them beat us.
That's good.
Exactly.
Hey, it's a competition.
That happens all the time.
It's a competition.
So if you move up, you better not.
With gentlemen's agreement, you got your guy, I got my guy. They do what they do. It's not my business. We keep it.
There's a good chance Dan Morgan has the other phone number too for Brandon Beane.
Yes,
I'll say that.
So that was funny to me because in 33, the Bills take the other receiver, Coleman, and then the Patriots are like, dang, we missed both of our guys. They trade back and get Polk, who they were very high on. Not as high as the other 2 receivers, but they liked him a lot. And to me, that's going to be an interesting trio to watch because, I want your opinion on the 3 receivers, those 3 receivers. But to me, just watching them as like a layman, they look like they are all kind of physical receivers who can win kind of the contested catch or the deep catch, but they have different ways of doing it. And so each one went to their different spots. I'm curious what you think of those 3 and then maybe the fit for each team because it's going to be tracked a lot, I think, those 3.
Well, first, let's go with New England because I heard this stat that New England had the 3rd worst, something worst is down the field contested catches.
Mm-hmm.
And Polk ranked extremely high.
Yep.
When you're able to utilize that statistics and that analysis, it helps you, but it also doesn't tell a story, which is, first of all, their offense and their whole team was uncharacteristic of what we know for the New England Patriots. So obviously Mac Jones goes to the Jaguars for a bag of potato chips, right?
Not even Lay's, like some, off-brand potato chips.
Some off-brand Pringles, right? Some Pringles. That's what
they call the tubes.
Yes, right?
Tube
so
chips.
He goes over there, and he was a first-round pick. Their offense wasn't very good. So Polk coming in there, I like it, but I don't like, well, all of a sudden he's going to give us this deep threat that we haven't had all last year. That's not a fair comparison because now you're putting unrealistic expectation because the situation has completely changed. The quarterback play, let's say, to some degree, should be an upgrade. The offense, because it's totally different now, should be an upgrade, right? So it's different. Javon Baker, their other pick, I'm interested to see how that goes. He's already upset that he's failed. He already had said, to me, he had said, look, I'm already mad. I'm taking it personal that I'm not going to get picked higher than I already should. And he was slotted 3rd and 4th. That brother didn't go in the 3rd and 4th. He went
4th round. Yeah, he went 4th round.
He went 4th round.
Yeah.
So now, he is now going to help him. So they have some outside guys who contested catches. But Baker's going to be interesting because he has a lot of shiftiness. And my comp was Brandon Lloyd.
Okay.
But I also think as a young player, he's going to have to just sometimes take what the corner gives him and do not too much dancing because they're all are going to be working out the chemistry and the timing of the new offense and their new roles and their new quarterback and their new head coach, right? And not one of these guys except the Washington kid, Polk. Ain't none of these boys played in that New England cold. So that's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And Baker played well at the Senior Bowl, but he also at times did too much at the line.
Okay. As far as taking too long to get off the line of scrimmage. With his moves, is that what you're saying? Yep.
Oh, man, he'll cross you over. But sometimes
quarterback already sacked, man. That was a nice move, but
Yes.
But one thing that I think was interesting, just kind of hearing the Patriots process, they talked to Drake May after they drafted him about some of these receivers and how they were going about the process. Like they weren't I won't say they were picking receivers he wanted because he's just a rookie, but they would ask what he thought. Like, what did he remember about this player? And what stands out for me is not necessarily the receivers they picked. This is the receivers they didn't pick. Because you mentioned Walker, who played with Drake. And I'm not saying Drake said anything that made them change their mind. But it's interesting that they took two receivers ahead, Polk. And Walker went 3 picks after Baker. And so they picked Polk and they picked Baker instead of Walker. So they valued these 2 receivers particularly more than the guy who already had chemistry with him in college. And to me, that just was interesting. And so I'm curious from your perspective, Steve, at least as you look at Walker, like what those receivers may have brought that maybe Walker doesn't, for lack of a better word, or does different. Does different is probably the better way to say it.
I think what he does different, he lacks the experience on the field because of his situation.
Okay.
Right? His situation of only really having 2 years of experience. Right? He's the developmental guy. 4th and beyond is developmental, meaning we're going to put him in here. We're not going to expect him to cure cancer. But what we are asking him to do is we're asking him to improve on the things that we need to him to improve on, but not giving him too much to where if we had grabbed him in the 3rd or 2nd round where some of these people, now he's automatically starting. And if he doesn't live up to expectation, then you're disappointed. Great example of that is Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman, whether it's lack of availability because of injuries or sometimes just not producing according to his draft pick. It's not about where I like a guy or not. It's about draft pick. If you are drafted in the first 2 or first 3 rounds, first 2, you're expected to play immediately. 3rd, situationally. 4th, less than situationally, but we're still developing. 5th, hey, let's see what we have. 6th and 7th, if he works out, great. If he doesn't, no one's going to say, hey, you cut this 7th round pick, how dare you? Off with his head, right? Stone him, flag on the play. You don't have that.
Right.
I'll tell you one thing Bill Belichick would have done, asked his rookie quarterback which receivers he likes in the draft. I'm going to tell you, Bills ain't going to do that.
That's
I'm going to
fair.
tell you that right now.
That's fair.
I'm going to say that right now. Steve, I'm curious. 6th receiver on your list, A.D. Mitchell goes the 11th receiver taken
57th pick.
to 52nd pick to the
pick.
Colts. And then Chris Ballard loses his mind in the press conference.
That was good.
Sticking up for A.D. Mitchell. First off, if you're him and you see your general manager do that after you're picked, what's your feeling coming into the building? Because I'd feel pretty damn good, personally, that they got my back. And then what's your take on this fit? Because we knew Indianapolis needed another receiver. We talked about it in the pre-draft show. And the type of skill set that he brings to that kind of group.
I love what Chris did, Ballard. But here's my thing. You had that pick at 14, homeboy. You could have picked him then if you really felt that confident about him.
He was one of the guys that people thought the Chiefs were moving up for. It was Mitchell or Worthy.
So my point is, I get it, but also too, people aren't going to put their name on what they're hearing, because in this process, you also don't want to create the same things that some of these other teams have created when they kind of butt heads, because then when you do pick them, then now you have to go, you over there, I love Lucy, and you got to go explaining yourself, right? But being a guy who has some baggage out of college, where there's smoke, there's fire, isn't it? I mean, I can sit here, I'll own the crap that I did, but this process is here for a reason. And they're young kids and they make mistakes. But here's the deal. The way the NIL money is going, the way college is conducting themselves, this is a now earlier process. Can these young men, including myself, do we handle ourselves as college athletes, or we handle ourselves as college professionals? And I think some of the money that's exchanging hands, some teams are saying, hey, are we getting a college athlete or college professional? And some teams are saying, we want a kid who can handle himself this way. To each his own, right? But if you love them that much, why'd you wait till 52nd? You should have picked them in with that 14th pick, like you sitting there screaming. But
they got a pretty good player with that pick.
Yeah,
though.
a lot to. Yeah,
I understand, but they also, you go out there and start dog cussing like he was doing. Then you should have picked him at 14.
That's the Chris Ballard way.
If you felt that froggy, pull that trigger at 14.
Well, let's talk, Steve. Let's talk about that real quick though, because like you're mentioning these things coming in with some baggage, and like we look at Jermaine Burton going to the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Later, that's not a talent. He was not picked there because of his talent as a football player. What do you do?
And hold on, though.
Yeah.
And some of this information that we're talking about now, I did not talk about it on the podcast because I did not want to be one of those people.
That's good.
Who
I
put
respect that
negative stuff out there. There's about 4-5 guys on this list that had some baggage that I know I was given information to, even last year's draft, that I go, because I'm not in that game. I don't like the guy. So I'm not into that.
I respect that. I appreciate that. But my point with this is, with these guys you're mentioning, and you included yourself in it, I'm fascinated by what those first few practices are, first few days, first training camp. Is that in your head as a player? Like, I got to prove these guys right for picking me. I got to be the opposite of what the perception. Because listen, teams are not going to hide from players what they have heard about that player. They're going to tell it to their face during the process about, I've heard blank, blank, and blank. What do you think? So once you're picked by that team, what's the mindset once you're in that building?
It depends on how bad it is. Because I did hear some teams say if they pick a certain guy, and I'm not saying it's A.D. Mitchell, so I'm going to just say that right now, that we may have to put a stipulation that you only get one strike, bro. Right? Some teams have said that based on what it was, you only get one strike.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's, there are teams that say, hey, is this the kind of guy we want in our city? Is this the type of guy we want in our building? Is this the type of guy we want in our locker room? And when I say building and locker room, I do mean that that's the difference where they say, do we want him in the building first? And what I mean by building is he going to be respectful to the janitor? Is he going to be respectful to the secretary? That's the building.
Right.
And then in the locker room, is he going to be first one in, first one out? Is he going to study? Right? All of those things. And so I know teams give guys assignments on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
They give them the playbook to see, hey, is this a kid who is going to respect the process, or is he just going to think, you're lucky to have me? I've seen some prospects think that they are on a recruiting trip on their pro day. I mean, not their pro day. They're on a recruiting trip on their visit.
30 visit.
Like on their 30 visit, they're like, yeah, they were kind of walking around like, hey, what y'all gonna do for me? Like, bro, this is a job interview.
It's like Willy Wonka said, strike that, reverse it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part that gets a little fuzzy.
It's wild. I'll use that kind of to get to another guy in Troy Franklin. Your 7th receiver. He's the 17th receiver taken by Denver at 102. And you mentioned gathering information. They have a private workout with Bo Nix the day after the pro day. Sean Payton's there standing there with Bo Nix, and Bo Nix has his backpack on. You know what Sean Payton asked him to do? Dump out your backpack. I want to see what's in there. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And you know what he was curious about? Every single thing in Bo Nix's backpack involved football. Nothing in his backpack did not involve. It was like tape. It was like a lacrosse ball to work on his back. And Sean Payton was like, he's got no distractions. He came here for this workout all about ball. He doesn't have anything else in his backpack. It's not ball. And the reason I use that is they use the added information when they're working out Bo Nix, the quarterback they're falling in love with, and who's there catching passes the day after the pro day, Troy Franklin. And they're getting an extra 2 hours with the wide receiver that they've already seen a lot on tape, but an extra 2 hours, Steve, with him in a private setting where they fall in love with the receiver even further. And just because of those little tidbits of information they get. The way I want to flip this is you get a chance as a rookie wide receiver to play with your college quarterback. Is that an advantage? What is the feeling as you're walking in as a receiver and you're going to play with the guy you played in college with?
It's a real big advantage,
right?
Because you know how Bo Nix looks at routes. What's even comforting is your quarterback is also going to stand up for you, going to vouch for you.
Mm-hmm.
Troy Franklin also fell because I don't think the way he was utilized in college, it translated to an excellent pro day and combine day.
Mm-hmm.
His on the field routes were not as fluid. And his pro day, he stayed away from some of those routes that weren't as fluid.
And that happens.
That kind of exposed him because those numbers are thrown into the bag of how does this shake out?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to his film and some of the things that he may not look as sharp on, you go, this is the kind of receiver he is. Sean Payton looks at him as a receiver in the 4th round versus the 2nd round. And whether you agree or disagree, pick number 102 says exactly who he is a player who is an outside threat, who can run a post, a glance, a slant, a hitch. He's not going to necessarily route you up. He will get better.
Yeah.
But he's a 4th round pick, whether you like it or not. That's what they picked him as. And that's how it goes.
But you had him as 7. So what'd you like about his game?
So I had him as 7th. Really is because some of these numbers, right, are really they're stuck where they are.
Yeah.
Right? For me to sit here and be a fool and go, I think this kid is so much better than man. I'm not doing that, bro. I don't have the bandwidth to sit there. I just don't.
Yeah.
But I didn't have Worthy as my number 5 prior to that 4-2-1. And then
Gotcha.
I start look, this speed, no one is passing up. So he has to move up. He has to. What I liked about Franklin is his speed.
Okay.
But I didn't think his routes were better. And I still don't think his routes are better than A.D. Mitchell.
Okay.
So that's why I had him there.
Okay.
Do I think Ladd McConkey routes are better than Franklin? I think overall, yes. But I think Franklin had more to his game than Ladd did.
Let's do this if we can, fellas. As we talked about a lot of these guys, I'm curious for the day 3 guys. There's a handful of day 3 guys who went 4th round or later. Steve, I'll start with you. Like, is there one that stood out to you? Like, where you're like, man, I love that fit of guys going rounds 4 to 7.
Tez Walker, I'm excited about that. Right, it's going to be open competition. I think that's going to be extremely interesting. He goes to the Ravens at a 4th round, 113. Where's my guy? Malachi Corley goes to the Jets.
Yep.
Yak King.
Yep.
Huh?
He had a lot of
The
Debo
Yak
comps.
King.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Malik Washington goes to the Dolphins.
I love that one.
I'm interested in that. And
Steve.
then, yes, sir.
Malik Washington. I'm reading his bio. Starts playing football at 6. At 8 years old, he starts watching Steve Smith.
Let's
it
go.
says it in his bio.
And
that's where he fell in love with wanting to be a receiver. 8 years old, starts watching Steve Smith, senior.
How cool is that?
Woo! That's a good spot for him.
First of all, Steve, how does it feel for you when you hear that the next generation grew up watching you? Not that it makes you feel old, but like what comes to your mind?
It's older. It does make me feel older, and I'm happy to feel older in regards to I'd rather be on this side of the dirt than the other side of the dirt.
Right.
True, man.
Right.
Good point.
I like Malik, and I've cultivated a relationship with him. So we've talked through this process to see, and I'm interested to see how he takes on this role. The Miami Dolphins using him, and also the other kid from USC,
Taj Washington,
as well.
Yep,
yes.
7th round.
So they're trying to find that next guy. All of a sudden, Braxton Berrios got a little bit of competition going on here, right? Because both of these guys also can play special teams as well, and so that adds a value. Berrios is a hell of a football player, but I think he's resting on his laurels a little bit. I think he's lost a little bit of that hunger since his social media success, right? And just kind of falling into he's been given some roles that I think he hasn't necessarily put his stamp on.
Yeah.
Right? He when he was with the Jets, you can see he was hungry. He's had some health issues in Miami. It hasn't really solidified the job, and now he's been put on notice.
Yeah.
That there's competition, and the competition is younger and cheaper.
Yes. That's
right?
great. That's great, Steve. Like, just kind of breaking it down from the Dolphins' perspective. They signed Braxton Berrios last year to be their number 3 receiver. He was replaced by midseason. So to talk about what you're saying, they wanted him to be that guy when all the attention is going to Tyreek, all the attention is going to Waddle. Who is going to get those opportunities in the middle of the field, one-on-one, or sometimes one on a linebacker? And too often, they got nothing from that 3rd spot. And so they spent a lot of time this offseason talking with Odell Beckham Jr., thinking maybe we bring in Odell to be that 3rd receiver. And, maybe there's still a chance, but I think the 6th and 7th round picks of Malik Washington, Washington and Taj Washington, 2 Washingtons. That's going to be fun.
Not brothers.
Not brothers. Different.
No.
Is Mike McDaniel telling you what he wants at that spot, and just kind of taking you a little behind the scenes? Mike McDaniel was asking for 2 rounds for Malik Washington. Starting in the 4th round, he kept bugging Chris Greer. Hey, Can we get Malik? We get Malik. They picked a couple guys before Malik. They had Muhammad Kamara, who fell a little further as an edge rusher. They wanted to get him and
needed
him. And they got a good value for him. Mike's getting nervous. And they still get him at the top of the 6th round. And Mike was very clear after his press conference. He's like, he has an opportunity to win a job immediately. How many 6th-round picks do you hear? Like, role and fit matters. How many 6th-round picks do you hear your head coach say you can earn a role on this offense immediately? And I think that's what you're talking about, Steve, with Braxton. It would not shock me week 1 if Malik Washington's your starting slot receiver as a 3rd receiver for the Dolphins. And your starting kick returner / punt returner, which he did excellent in college, as James talked about special teams.
And then the other guy, Jamarii Thrash to the Browns. I like that pick because Cedric Tillman is a true number X. He's a true X wide receiver. You know all the other receivers they got with Coop. Coop is excellent. Not gonna say a word. He's gonna go in about his business, and then they acquired another wide receiver for Denver, and so now the key question is going to be.
I hope people caught that. Another wide receiver from Denver.
Keep going, Steve. Keep going.
I don't know who that is.
A wide receiver from Denver that they acquired. Now all of a sudden, and as people went in my mentions, got paid. Congratulations. Right? I'm glad he got paid and he deserves to get paid. But they also use another draft pick to add more to this arsenal of wide receivers. The key is how do they all fit? And I personally think, who knocks out another guy? Because I do think Thrash is a better route runner than Tillman from Tennessee last year they required. I didn't really see him kind of step up in the way that I thought he would be. But then also with Deshaun Watson, what he's done, if he comes back and he plays like he did against the Baltimore Ravens prior to getting hurt, or does he kind of play like he's played prior to that Baltimore Ravens game where David Njoku went missing, right? Is this offense taking a step forward, or is this offense going to continue to stall in a way that we did not expect when you got the trade for Deshaun Watson?
They didn't have a whole lot of holes going into this draft. I mean, they really didn't. They didn't have a bunch. I like that thought process. I'm going to stay in the state, Steve. I'm going to stay in the great state of Ohio. That is a great state. Go Bucks. Jermaine Burton, to me, Steve, could be one of the steals of this draft if it works out. Like, the situation that he's coming into, and we talked about this in the pre-draft show. The plan I was told in Cincinnati was this: we're going to have T. Higgins for a year, or we're going to trade him. That's kind of our two schools of thought.
Yeah. And
so this is, you could be a part of us trying to go get it right now with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and that group, or you can take advantage of that and then be our guy opposite of Jamar Chase moving forward if you thrive. And also, you're going to get a boatload of reps early because Jamar's waiting on his contract. He's probably not showing up. T. Higgins wants a trade. He's probably not showing up. Nope. Is it going to be like, hey, Jermaine, I know you just front of the line again. Like, he's going to get a boatload of reps come throughout this entire spring portion. And I just think and we talked about off the field, we talked about different things with different guys. I just like the situation he walks into with a receiver room that's established with a guy like Jamar Chase, with a quarterback like Joe Burrow, with one of the best receiver coaches in football and Troy Walters. Like, right?
Troy Walters, he doesn't get a lot of credit.
Does not, and he deserves it,
bro. And hell of a coach.
So I think this is a great situation for him to walk into, with that coach as his position coach, with that quarterback that can be very demanding, but at the same time will reward you for your work. And Jamar Chase also being in that room, and there's going to be success and favorable matchups for you on Sundays. I'm excited to see what he does and to see how that turns out, because that could be one of the steals we look at when we're evaluating this class, maybe in a year or two.
And they still have Charlie Jones that they got from Purdue as well. Mm-hmm. So he's going to go ahead and just like when we talk about Berrios and the Washington kids, Charlie's going to really work in that slot, right? He's going to do his thing. And does because Charlie eventually is going to take over for Tyler Boyd, and
Yep.
then does Jermaine Burton take over for T. Higgins, or take over in the meantime while he works out his contract
Exactly.
with Jamar Chase? But somebody is not going to be there long term, and it sounds like they're preparing
For it to
for
be T. Higgins.
T. Higgins walking,
Yep.
because justifiably so, when he's on the field, he's a hell of a football player. That is a little bit of the problem, that he has not always finished the game, right? And I had said and looked and said, man, he just hasn't been consistent. There are times he started a game but hasn't finished.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at this T. Higgins availability and consistency, if you just go with the normal 70 plays of the National Football League, of good teams that are and throwing teams like the Cincinnati Bengals, averaging, let's say, 70 plays a game, 17 weeks. That's almost 2,000. It's like 1,700 plays.
Mm-hmm.
T. Higgins has not played beyond 800 snaps since his rookie year. His rookie year, he was 808 snaps compared to the rest of his team. He only played, I believe, 500 or so. Let me round it up. 550 plays compared to the rest of the team who played. So that's around 54%. Let's round it up. 57% availability. Let me tell you, that's not a top-tier contract if you're not available. And that's the problem that they're having right now.
And let me ask you this, Steve, with formational situations or binds you could put defenses in. If Jermaine Burton can play inside and outside, which teams believe he can.
He can, yes.
And Jamar can play inside and outside.
Which he does. And you know he does it at a high level. Teams forget, like, oh, man, this receiver can line up all over the place. Well, the other receiver's got to be able to line up other spots, too, if you're going to move him around. So how do you talk about the advantage you put teams in if you have multiple receivers that can play inside and outside, because then you're just confusing people. You're confusing people and you're applying pressure. So when that corner is looking back at the safety to get the call, they said go. All of a sudden now you're going to get on your high horse and understand, right, some of these corners, they on some donkeys and they're going to get some thoroughbreds and some Kentucky Derby runners. And so that's where Zach Taylor has done a great job of saying, look, let's get him with speed. He also understands that because he's in competition with who? The Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
Understanding a lot of those games that has come down to the wire for Buffalo, for Cincinnati as well, is what? That team has more speed than us. So they're trying to match it and duplicate the same thing in their own unique way based on their own offense and what they're
fellas, as we kind of talk about these draft rooms and picks, I want to, and this is probably towards the end of our convo here, I would love to get your thoughts on the landscape after the draft of top receiver rooms, if we can do that. If we can have a little fun here. I know it may create a little bit of intrigue, and as you guys go through your list, I'll go ahead and go first, so I give you some time to be able to think about it.
Go first.
Top 5 wide receiver rooms in the league.
Thank you.
For me, number 1, I got to go with the Miami Dolphins. I think they have the number 1 receiving room in the league. I think they have 2 top 10 receivers, and maybe the most dangerous. I don't even think maybe. I think that's without a maybe the most dangerous receiver in football in Tyreek Hill. Some may say Justin Jefferson, so I guess it is a maybe. But Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, already in that room, and then you add in a couple of potential prospects we talked about, and Malik Washington and Taj Washington, who can potentially fill that third receiver role. I think that's the group that still drives defensive coordinators crazy, that leaves them trying to figure out, how do I handle this group? And I think they're number 1. Number 2 for me is the Eagles. I think they have shown with the money they paid this offseason to Devontae Smith and to A.J. Brown that they feel like they have something that rivals the Dolphins, is the best core group. You also add Dallas Goedert in that room if you want to include a tight end, one of the better tight ends in the league, to add to that room. And they added a couple guys in free agency to potentially compete for that third role, and Devontae Parker and Paris Campbell, a couple of other guys with different roles there. So I like them as 2. Number 3 for me, and it's largely because of the move they just made in the draft, the current version of the San Francisco 49ers. We don't know how long Debo, Brandon Ayuk are going to be 49ers, but if they roll out with Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, and Ricky Pearsall as their top 3, along with George Kittle, if you want to include tight ends, to me, that's a dominant group that fits Kyle Shanahan's scheme well. You have really good route runners and Pearsall and Ayuk and George Kittle, who can do everything, and then Debo as kind of your yak monster. Number 4 for me is the Bengals. I think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins still currently with the Bengals. Those 2 are really special. And JP, you discussed how much you love Jermaine Burton. And we're going to see if he can come in and fill that number 3 role, potentially more in the future. I love what they do, especially with Joe Burrow. That chemistry is excellent. And number 5, I'm going to add a new one to this list. I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I love them as number 5. And I think maybe last year they might have been in the bottom 5 before people saw what they could do. But with CJ Stroud elevating a lot of their games, you add Stephon Diggs, who has been an elite receiver for a long time in this game, to Nico Collins, who showed he could have the potential to be a number 1 last year, over 1,000 yards, even when Tank Dell went down. And then I love Tank Dell. We talked about him on the last chat. I know you love him, Steve, and James too. Tank Dell, his ability potentially as a number 3 in this offense to win as a route runner, to get open. I think they have a potential to be really special, and don't be surprised if CJ Stroud is an MVP this year with that trio of receivers along with Dalton Schultz. So that's my top 5, going with the Eagles, the Dolphins, 49ers, Bengals, and then the Texans. What y'all got, fellas?
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not doing it right now because I've tried to do it twice now while I was writing it down, and I scribbled out this and scribbled out that.
Yeah.
Because
you know what Steve, tell me if you're coming to the same thing, because I don't really want to do it either. Because if you're coming to it with the same thing as me, man, this 1-2 combo is great.
Titans, like they just added. I want to throw the Bears in there because of what they got, right?
Dude, Seattle's got DK, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like that's a good
y'all,
3
whoever's your favorite.
Because a lot of these teams have good top 2. Because here's the thing, Steve. Like I keep looking at, and Cam's right. Like you look at the top 2 in Miami, you look at the top 2 in Philly. You're like, okay.
Cincinnati.
And there's a question mark. Cincinnati. All those are great 1-2 combos. But that third option, Cam, you're sitting there going like, it's one of these Washington guys are going to be great, or Burton might be great. Like I'm looking at Seattle going like, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba 1st round pick, DK Metcalf and Tyler. That's a great 3 as opposed to great 2.
And that's why it's your list, because for some teams,
Chicago's
3
got a good group.
It makes them more valuable than 2, and then for some teams, their 2 are better than whatever 3 you throw out there. And so it's just whatever your flavor is.
Too hard, man.
I think this year is going to be fun because the amount of receiver talent that has been infused in this league over the last 5 years, and we're seeing it. We talked about it last chat before the draft. The value of the position has tremendously increased to the fact that, I don't know, the way NFL teams are paying them, are receivers more valuable than tackles, because over 30 million just getting paid for AJ Brown. Well, you got to imagine that. You got to imagine that your CD Lamb, your your Justin Jefferson, your Jamar Chase are going to say, "I want 35." There's no tackle that's close.
It has to do with your quarterback isn't anything without your wide receiver. And this is totally off the subject, but we have to talk about the Michael Penix thing because so many people were outraged. How can you draft a quarterback at number 8 and then pay Kirk Cousins? Because here's how. You have forgotten this is Raheem Morris's 2nd head coaching job. His first head coaching job was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was young. They drafted a quarterback named Josh Freeman out of Kansas State. Mm-hmm. Josh Freeman was not ready to be that NFL quarterback to Burton the workload that was required. And he was put in a position where there was no win. After that, they got Josh Johnson. They had all these different guys to play. And what I like what the Atlanta Falcons did is they said, hey, we are going to do the old school way, which is we're going to get a guy that we know and we like, that we spent time with him. We've talked to him. We're going to grab him. We're going to let him sit. We got our other quarterback because let's be honest, the New York Jets, they didn't like, or let me rephrase that. They did not feel comfortable with their backup quarterback. And you could tell me they did because if they did, why did they give him away for a bag of Tringles?
The chips are just changing, getting worse and worse, you know?
I say bugles, man. Bag of bugles.
Exactly. And so I said it and I'll say it again. You reach for a quarterback to get your guy number 8, or in 2 years, you're reaching for the pen to fill out your address for where you want your stuff shipped because you're no longer employed. Hey, where do you want your box of nothings shipped to because you're no longer here? They have what they call a locator card. You got to fill out that locator card. He's already experienced it, so he knows you get your quarterback that you want as a starter, and you get the guy that you can groom.
Mm-hmm.
No Diddy. Groom to be the quarterback that you're comfortable with that can help you continue moving on. And the last point, when they drafted Penix and they got Kirk Cousins, I text somebody in their front office and I said, now Drake London can grow as a receiver because now he gets an opportunity to run all the routes in a route tree that he was not able to run when who threw it, Desmond Ridder, was the quarterback.
The other part of this is I hate that video that everybody's showing Terry Fontenot explaining to Arthur Blank, and everybody goes, he's telling Arthur, why we picked Penix at 8. I'm like, no. From all the intel I have, Arthur Smith had the final call in making this call, and he wants sustained success. Arthur Blank, sorry. Arthur Smith is not in that building anymore. Yeah. Arthur Smith is dealing with 2 quarterbacks in Pittsburgh right now that he's having a great time with. He has 2 completely different quarterbacks. Arthur Blank is the one who made the call. He wants sustained success. And the other part that nobody's talking about is why are we so comfortable in a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles that he's just going to be right back to the same player that we've seen before? They believe Michael Penix has a lot of traits that Kirk Cousins has. They think he's a souped-up version with a better arm, a more lively arm, an ability to make probably more throws, but they process similarly. They throw with anticipation similarly. They think it's going to be a smooth transition. Arthur Blank at 81 does not want to just 2 years and then be searching for a quarterback again. Yeah. He wants this to continue. And they got a roster put in place. They didn't have a single defensive player that they wanted to take at 8. They didn't like Dallas Turner. And they go, this guy blew us away. His pro day was outstanding to that offensive staff. And they said, listen, this won't be popular, but this is what's going to be best for our organization. And I don't think anybody's going to be upset if they keep winning football games for 5 years down in Atlanta.
There's just so many young quarterbacks who get thrusted into playing. And it doesn't always work out, right? Whether it's the player or sometimes it's the play caller, right? I don't necessarily think that Lou Getsy was the guy for Justin Fields at his age. And I think Lou Getsy will be better now in Vegas because of the different situation, right? The expectation. But at the end of the day, right, you got to be comfortable. And here's the last thing, man. I was at Cincinnati's pro day 2 years ago, however many years ago that he was there. And, man, when Atlanta Falcons drafted, bro, I text Terry. I said, bro, we was at the same pro day. I was at the same pro day you was at. What happened? Did you see something I missed? Because there were some throws I was like, ooh. And so Terry goes, in text, he goes, come on, Steve. That's all
nothing cracks me up more than Steve Smith talking about Desmond Ridder. One of the funniest. Right? I'm
here's the other part. People are like, he's a former Panther. He's a hater. You can't believe anything coming out of his mouth. Okay. Listen, I told you, I ain't never played quarterback. But I can tell you one thing I pay a lot of attention to. Orange juice and quarterbacks because it's essential. I need to get my vitamin C, and I need that football.